thinking back on my time in China, like I kind of can't. It seems surreal in a way because like you hear so much about China the last 2 years because of COVID, and then it's like, oh shit, I was there.
And through those, we want to gain the attention of the Nordics to actually educate and inspire people that are new to Web3 and kind of hesitating to get involved.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Rico here, CEO of SourcePoint Asia, host of the Being China podcast, host of the YouTube channel, of course. Back with another one. This is another one of these episodes, and I'm trying to catch up with some of our partners, some of our previous employees, interns, see what they've been up to, especially people I haven't spoken to in a minute. So cue the intro, please.
I remember this crypto game called Axie Infinity got super popular in the Philippines because you could earn like 20 to $100 a day playing it, and people just started playing that during COVID instead of trying to go to work. But the problem of unbanked people is like, it's kind of baffling. I think, like, how can people not have bank accounts or access to bank? I think there's like over 1 billion people that don't have access to bank accounts, even though they have access to internet, which is crazy. What does that situation look like in the Philippines, and what do you think is like affecting or like?
Well, there's a couple different things. I think there's a distrust of government and banks in general. I think there's an education issue as well involved with that. And then there's just the fact of the matter that, like, for a lot of people, cash is king, and there's a lot of corruption. Like, so for example, a lot of companies want to get paid in cash because they don't want to report how much money they're making to the government, right? Or they pay their employees in cash and things like that because of that same reason. They don't want it to be tracked. So that's a big thing. I guess, I mean, it surprises me, like, a lot of times when I'll go to certain restaurants or shops and it's like, no, cash only. Why cash only?
Yeah,
it's exactly. Like, why? And then if you want sometimes if you want like a legitimate receipt, like then they're going to charge you an additional fee on top of that. So it's like, I know what you guys are doing. You just don't want to pay taxes. That's it. That's why you want cash. You don't want some people tracking you and things like that. Then for a lot of people, like I said, the distrust of government and banks, and they'd rather just keep cash at home in case something happens.
Yeah, it's funny. I think like places like the Philippines, for example, is where crypto and blockchain could have the biggest like tangible use cases of serving as a store of value and payment method, because here in Sweden and in the Nordics, everyone trusts the government to their teeth. So that, there's so many places that don't even accept cash. Like, you have to pay by card or Apple Pay, otherwise you can't buy anything.
It's the complete opposite,
Yeah, complete opposite. But yes, I think some level of mistrust is healthy, but not like, it's not go like complete folio hat. Alex Jones.
Listen, America. This was government. The government are aliens. They're lizards. It's my best Alex Jones impression. I used to watch a lot of his stuff when I was in college. So I was a conspiracy theorist a little bit. And then at some stage I started thinking to myself, was like, even if some of this stuff is true, right? So, because some things I didn't believe, but some things I was really like, yeah, for sure. Like aliens built the pyramids.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, I just started thinking, I was like, what can I do about this? There's nothing I can do about this problem that I'm seeing or whatever. So, like, I just kind of moved on. I was like, I'm not going to do this. I'm just making myself unhappy, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I guess a lot of people go through those phases. I also had like maybe a bit of an alt-right phase where I was like listening to a bit of Alex Jones and Ben Shapiro and this type of people, but also past in college, of course. And it's like kind of a searching for your identity type of thing, I guess.
Yeah.
And also trying to be provocative, trying to be edgy.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, I don't want to be like everybody else. So like, yeah, I'm gonna, I'm going
Exactly.
against the norm. But I also think it's still healthy. Sometimes I mean, I still watch some of Ben Shapiro's stuff from time to time, Alex Jones just clips, not like documentaries or anything like that. But it's good because you hear sort of opposing opinions, and then you can kind of like you hear your normal stuff, especially with the algorithm. You're gonna be listening to stuff that you always agree with, and then it's good to just hear contrasting opinions from time to time. So, for example, like my girlfriend's from Ukraine, and the war broke out, which is very unfortunate, and she was very devastated by it. And so, like at the time, I knew kind of some of the politics between Russia and Ukraine, but I didn't fully understand it. So I was like, okay, I started doing research, and she was telling me about stuff, and then I kind of went down a rabbit hole of on like how Ukraine views the situation, like how Ukrainian people view the situation. And of course, there's huge support around the world for Ukraine from a social media standpoint. And then I think it was maybe like 2-3 weeks later, I realized I was like, I'm only hearing one side of the story. There's a lot of people in Russia that don't agree with this. I have a lot of Russian friends that are very reasonable people, and some of them are like Russian Ukrainian people. They might have been born in Russia, but their grandparents are from Ukraine, for example.
Yeah.
So I started going in the opposite direction. I was like, let me call up all of my Russian friends and just kind of talk to them about what's going on, get educated from their perspective, what's happening, and then they would send me stuff to read, and so it kind of gave me a more balanced opinion on the situation.
Yeah.
So
for sure, I think it feels very obvious that Russia is kind of in the wrong here, but for sure there's a lot of stuff and promises that haven't been kept by the West and NATO specifically. But maybe let's not go down that.
We don't have to go deep into it. It's just an example.
Yeah.
Something that I was discussing with Luke was I didn't know that you guys became quite close in relationship wise, like just through his internship and stuff like that. And he said you guys have been keeping in touch and everything. So how did that come? I guess obviously shared experiences, both being in China, both working for the same company, things like that. But just from your perspective, what kind of, how did the relationship transpire?
Yeah, that was interesting actually. Now that I think about it, yeah, we've been keeping in touch now. We haven't spoken for a while. I actually spoke to him this week. I think because you got in touch with both of us, we were like reminded of each other and we started talking again. We had a call maybe half year ago or something, and just like been messaging every now and then. But when we were in China, I guess we started hanging out quite a bit during the internship, and we went to Shenzhen together, and maybe even to Hong Kong. I can't completely remember. But we spent quite
I think
a bit of time
we were all in Hong Kong together, no?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, right. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. At least you and me have been in Hong Kong for a trip.
When I did the presentation for Global Sources, you were with me.
Yeah.
And then I went with Luke as well during the internship just before we went to Philippines. So we went from like Guangzhou to Hong Kong and then Philippines.
Right, exactly. I mean, yeah, those were super good times. And I guess, exactly, now I remember, because you left to the Philippines for quite a while. I think you were gone for like a month or two. And then
I was here for 2.5, I think. Yeah, 2.5 months.
Yeah, exactly. So me and Luke were like grinding it out at the office and just hanging out, and we became quite.
Do you have you spoken to Vincent? Have you spoken to Imogen at all? Have your views on them evolved?
I still keep in touch with
And Mike as
Vincent.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, I still keep in touch with Vincent. Like I text him every maybe three times. Like I'll reach out to him like every month or so, maybe 2 months or so, just to see what's going on. We used like when I first came back from China, we would have calls maybe every once a month, 2 times a month, just to see what's going on. And hasn't been as consistent lately. I'm definitely due for a call. I actually messaged him like right before hopping on that podcast. So yeah, we still keep in touch a lot, just because like we got along really well and share a
Yeah.
lot of the similar experiences in our background in regards to China. So yeah, still really nice, still a great friend. In terms of the other people, I haven't talked to Imogen since leaving. I still have her on WeChat, but yeah, apart from that, like I haven't really kept in touch with the other. I mean, I still keep in touch with Mike. I haven't spoke to him in a minute, but I can still hit him up anytime. But yeah, apart from that, like the person who I had the best connection with at SFA was probably Vincent, and I still keep in touch with him like all the time. So yeah,
How dare you, Luke? You should have said me.
well, yeah, apart from you, but it was like you were the boss. So Vincent and I like we were the guys under you, so we had a lot more in common, and we had like we have a lot of the same background in terms of like we went to the same kind of schooling. Like we both went to Waldorf school before, so we had that in common, and just like the whole China aspect too. Like, yeah, he's a great guy. Anytime, like I told him, like anytime I'm going to Finland, I'm seeing you, and anytime you come to North America, like hit me up. So
no, Vincent. I mean, Vincent, like I said, like about you, he was a star. So it's one of those things where it's like, I'm not surprised that you guys got along. I'm not surprised that you guys had a strong connection. And I mean, I would hope that a little bit of why you guys were able to connect, because we tried to do quite a bit of sort of research and sort of like even the interview questions that I would ask would be non-traditional, because I wanted to sort of understand people's psychology. Like, I don't know if you know this about me, but like I like psychology. I'm interested in that. So so I it's cool that you guys are still in touch and amicable. I don't think we've ever had, maybe we've had one or two employees that were assholes in the company, but I think in general the company vibe has always been everybody's kind of chilled, right?
Yeah,
like we're doing our work, but like it's not egotistical stuff going on in the office.
No, never.
Yep. Cool, man.
Because I think it's like when you are in China as a Westerner, it's easy to connect with other Westerners, but it's not that easy to find like super reasonable other Westerners, in my opinion. Like some of the people or the Westerners that hang out in China there's a specific type of them, and I feel like.
Are you talking about
many of them have
people
a huge ego?
Are you talking about just in general, or like people that, let's say, teach English or this kind of stuff, or even just entrepreneurs in China?
I would say in general, but maybe more towards the teaching English. Yeah, like basic Westerner in China, like especially guys. Like there's not that many Western women out there actually, but guys are like many of them have a big ego because they've gotten so much praise from the
from the female
people.
population.
Yeah, exactly.
And just no, I mean it's I mean I guess I have to be delicate about what I say because this is still Source Nation. But
yeah,
I will say this. I will say this. Like I agree with you. I always felt that a lot of people's egos got inflated. Foreign men's egos got inflated when they arrived in China, because it was like I mean, for me, I was always realistic about it because I went through when I was in college and whatever, and trying to date girls, I got rejected a lot of times and things like that. So I had to figure out like it's not just about looks, but it's because I have gotten complimented on my looks, but like it was more about like my personality, like and not being able, not feeling comfortable when I talk to somebody for the first time. So then you come across as awkward or socially awkward. So I had to learn how to kind of just be confident in myself and this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of those guys, those same guys that maybe were socially awkward, moved to China, and then all of a sudden they're a superstar, right?
Yeah.
They didn't learn how to communicate with people and to actually just be a good person or be an interesting person or have an interesting life. So then it goes like, all right, like I'm now I'm Denzel Washington or now I'm Brad Pitt or whatever. Like it's just like it automatically overnight. And yes, it can go to people's minds. I mean, I remember there was one teacher I used to work with. I won't say his name, but I mean, this dude was like, he was like always coming to work like super hungover, smelled like cigarettes all the time. Very skinny guy, and yeah, I mean, he was still getting like you would see him out sometimes because I would go out with the teachers and stuff, and you would see him out with like the prettiest girl, and you're like, how is this happening? Like, like why is this? And it's just because he's a Lao Wai, that's it. So that there's a little bit of that for sure, and it seems more consistent with people that go there with the intention of like, I'm gonna be teaching English for 6 months and make X amount of money, and I don't care because I'll just be like traveling around Southeast Asia during that time period, and there's like no real ambition to go in there, not trying to understand the country and the culture and things like that. Whereas like for me, my approach was always like, I want to live in China because I think it's interesting, and I want to start a business as well. So it is always like I want to respect the culture, understand the culture a little bit more, things like that. Embrace the culture, essentially, food, whatever, like customs, all these things. I want to do it. So
same, and that's why like that it ties into why I like became close with Luke, because I found him to be like super reasonable and like down to earth guy. So we just clicked, and we also of course had the same like hustle entrepreneurial kind of mindset, and just like want to explore the world. That's why we were in China.
I think I asked Luke this question before. It was like yesterday when I interviewed him. I think it's interesting that I was like I don't want to give myself all the credit, but like able to bring in people into the company that sort of matched the company ethos or personality. Like, because I think we only had 1 or 2 asshole employees, which I fired very quickly. And yeah, it just seems like there was like always like a good vibe in the office, good like no ego involved, things like that. So
yeah, definitely. I had a super good time working for SFA. Shout out to the team, Imogen, the boss.
Imogen,
is she
the
still
machine.
with SFA?
Yeah. Imogen's our CEO essentially.
Nice. Love to hear it.
Yeah, no, I mean China is a whole other like thing right now. It's interesting because it's so different, right? Like you were there 2018, right? I the last time I was in China was 2020. Like I guess 2020, early 2020. And it's a different animal right now. Like I view it so differently. But yeah, it's also interesting to think about it and be like, well, I lived there for 5 years though, and I'm still doing business in China. And like if you talk to if I talk to Imogen or I talk to the team, the rest of the team, they don't really make it sound like it's so different from when I was there, you know. But then
Right.
when you actually, you know, read about certain things that were going on, you see, you know, YouTube videos or whatever, Instagram videos, you're like, I think it's a little bit different than 2 years ago, you know.
Yeah, and even when I was in China, I had met a lot of people who were like even at the time they were a bit on the fence if they were going to stay or not, and that most of those people that I met are gone now, not there anymore. So I don't know if I went back if I'd have the same experience in a way, because I mean you're there and you spend a lot of time with the expat community, and most of those are gone. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I say, like, I don't know if
Wait, what do you mean by
I'll
most
ever
of
go.
those are cons?
Like they've moved out of China because
Oh, gone.
they.
I heard cons, like con artists.
Oh yeah, no, that's gone. They're out of China because it was just too hard to be there.
Mm.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's it's one of those things where it's like you don't know until you go, because I mean, even before I moved to China, I remember there's a perception that I had of China prior to going to China. And then when I was in China, I was like, oh, this is not what I thought. Like this is much more cool and
yeah,
loose than what I had in mind. Um, but right now it's a little bit different because I have that experience of living there and all that stuff, and I know people that are on the ground. I would say that the kind of the biggest issues right now in terms of living in China and business in China are to do with COVID restrictions and sort
yeah,
of the restriction of movement between different places, right?
yeah,
And the also the zero COVID policy, right?
yeah, yeah,
It's like it's a little bit unreasonable because I think COVID is here to stay. I think COVID's not going is not going anywhere, and it's like we just have to start thinking about it like it's the flu kind of thing, you know.
yeah,
So I don't know how long they're going to continue that sort of zero COVID policy, but like I'll tell you from my perspective, and you're in logistics, I'm sure you had some issues with it as well. Um, like we had goods stuck in Shanghai for like a month. Like these were finished goods in a factory, right? And we were trying to inspect them and then ship them out, and we couldn't actually go into Shanghai. It didn't matter. It was like I was talking to divisions. Can we send somebody there? Even from within the province, can we send somebody there? It's like nope, nope, nope. We have to wait. You know, can we get some of the goods out of the province? Nope, not zero COVID policy. So yeah, that's tough.
is it
Some
is it still like that?
Yeah, that was two. That was a month ago. It was like 2 months ago.
Jeez.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's not sustainable, right? So I'm sure they've come up with some sort of system where they're like, okay, we can shut down this part of China, but we can't shut down this other part of China because of X, Y, and Z reason.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, it's not a long-term sustainable thing, you know.
yeah, I don't know. Like, obviously you have a whole company there, so it's affected your company probably more than most other people. Like, is the
That's super interesting. How has like Guangzhou been doing throughout this whole pandemic?
From my understanding, from talking to Imogen, because I talked to Imogen about lockdowns and things like that. So there was two lockdowns. Obviously, the Delta variant in January. It was
Yeah.
it hit Guangzhou earlier, so I knew it was gonna come to Manila. I already predicted it. I was like, okay, December in Guangzhou was a little bit tough for a couple of weeks, and then
Yeah.
for sure in January, all of a sudden everybody got the Delta variant and stuff like that. So, but yeah, Guangzhou's been okay. I think it's been more so just southern China in general. So Shenzhen has had multiple lockdowns, whether it was like for a week or whatever. they just restrict movement between the cities. So that makes it difficult for even people from Guangzhou, because it's like, you can't go to Shenzhen quickly just to go to the market or go to a factory and have a meeting or something like that. So that's been the more difficult thing. But I think Guangzhou's been fine. I think the worst has been Shanghai for sure. I'm not sure if you heard about what happened in Shanghai in the last few months.
Not in detail. Okay.
I mean, simply put, they had a very long lockdown and it was very strict, and strict in the sense that like a lot of people were not allowed to leave their actual apartments.
Yeah.
Like even if they needed to get food and things like that, food was being delivered subsidized by the government, because again of the zero COVID policy. So it's like some people, especially some people maybe who didn't have as much money or whatever, like, they're basically they were living on like rice or something like that. Like it was, some people were like running out of food. So that was that was tough. But then in terms from the business perspective on that, we had, I don't know, we had like 8 different productions that were stuck. They were finished productions, right? Ready to ship out, ready to QC and ship out. They were stuck in Shanghai. We couldn't go into Shanghai. We couldn't get them out of Shanghai for like 3 weeks. So yeah, that was just from a business perspective, it was really, really, really frustrating because, of course, we explain it to the clients. Yeah. But as you know, from working in sales and stuff like that with us, the clients would be understanding, but at the same time, they're frustrated as well because it's like, why isn't this happening? It's like, well, it's out of our hands right now,
Yeah. And it's crazy that it's still like that. Especially like with production in the eastern parts of the world. It's still so much out of the control of the sourcing company or like the buyer.
Yeah,
it's like fully in control of the factories and the local government.
Local government, I would say more so, because just that some of those policies, man, like it's not sustainable because you're just blocking everybody from shipping things. So I don't know if it's gonna. I don't know when it's going to change, but it has to change at some stage. Like even with the Philippines, because we started doing some small stuff in the Philippines, production-wise, things like that. Like even in the Philippines, they had the longest lockdown in the world, right? Like out of most countries. And at some stage, you start asking yourself, like, how is this sustainable for the average person who was like working at like McDonald's, right? And supporting their. I mean, there's no offense to anybody that works at McDonald's, but I'm just saying, like, if you're not making a certain amount of money and then all of a sudden you can't work or the restaurant shut down and stuff like that, it's very, very difficult. And you do that for 2 years, it messes up the whole economy of the country. And I think that's why they've kind of just decided, like, we're just going to deal with COVID, whether people, if there's an increase, we're not going to shut down, things like that. We're not going to have a strict lockdown, hopefully, not again. I mean, overall though, like, I would say that Philippines had the longest, strictest lockdown, right? But it wasn't so bad. I think if you're living in BGC and we kind of figured out some things a little bit earlier in terms of being able to go and travel to islands and things like that, like how we could go, right? And then of course, like I said,
Is that what it's like in the Philippines?
Yeah, it was a strict lockdowns. We had how many lockdowns did we have? We had about, like, in terms of the really strict level lockdown where you have a curfew of like 10 p.m., for example, for like between 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. you can't be outside. That was about 6 times, I would say, in the last 2 years. And then some of them were extended, like it was like 2 months at a time or 3 months at a time and things like that. So it was frustrating. Even more frustrating than that was like the aspect of them saying like, "Oh, it's going to be 2 weeks," but then in 2 weeks they're like, you know, and you know that they're probably doing that on purpose because they don't want people to freak out, right? Um, I used to joke with my friends and say like they would come up with different lockdown levels. They're just coming up with different terminology for the strictness of the lockdown. So at some stage, I feel like we had about 8 or 10 different versions of lockdowns, and they're just coming up with different stuff. I was like, now it's like yellow, blue, green, grocery bag level lockdown. It's like, okay, I was like, yo, what does that mean exactly? Like, next week it's red piano level. Wait, what? Okay. It's like, all right, like you guys are just making stuff up at this stage. Yep. So
What's
yeah,
it like now? Is it still strict in the Philippines? Or?
No, it's actually opened up. Like this is the least strict it's been. Like there's actually a lot of tourism picking up again. I was just on vacation in Puerto Galera, and it was busy, man. Like I went to the beach and I was like, oh wow, this is much busier than it was 6 months ago. Even did you ever go to Shangri-La in Manila?
No, I didn't. No.
There's a speakeasy inside the Shangri-La called the Back Room. It's my favorite speakeasy. I was there last night with my girlfriend, and I was catching up with it. Ironically, one of my friends who I hadn't seen in more than 2 years, his name is Alex. He's been on the podcast, and he was living in Europe and all this stuff. He just came to visit for 2 weeks. So we were just catching up. And then I also met another guy who has like he runs a company that basically does like market analysis when a company launches a new product. So for example, if Apple, and actually he works with Apple, so for example, if Apple launches a new iPhone, they track based off of web analytics and all that stuff, like what people are saying about the product. So if people are focusing on like from the marketing materials, if people are focusing on the camera, but Apple wants them to focus on the new security feature on the phone that scans your face or whatever, they will change their marketing materials to help people focus on what Apple wants them to focus on. Does that make sense?
Oh, I see.
So it's like, yeah, I mean, I met that guy and I was just like, he'd been in the Philippines for a couple of weeks. He hadn't been here for 2.5 years because of COVID.
Yeah.
400 employees in the Philippines, and he hadn't seen them in 2.5 years. And then it was just like meeting somebody like that, where you go like, oh, I mean, this dude is running potentially like $1 billion company, and he was not able to actually see his employees for all that time, right? So yeah, it's changing. It's definitely changing. It's much more open now than it was before.
That's good to hear, because I've actually been wanting to visit. I was in Thailand in March, and that was like the first time being back in Asia since 2019.
Yeah.
And COVID, basically, and it was super nice, very nostalgic. I was actually supposed to meet up with Alex in Bangkok. Maybe it's the same Alex we're talking about.
Alex Avant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he had to travel back to Copenhagen for family thing. So that was sad that we didn't get to meet each other. But it's funny. We've been in the same place so many times. Now he was in Copenhagen. I'm here in Stockholm, but still haven't met each other. Just been talking online since like 2019. Yeah. But it's like it's so interesting, especially now with COVID, how many digital relationships you can have with people that you've never met, but you still talk to frequently. Yeah, super interesting.
It definitely brought, I guess, if we look at the positives of it, right? Because I think a lot of times when we have conversations, it's about, I'm not saying me and you specifically, just saying in general, when we talk about COVID, it's a lot about like, oh, we're in lockdown, we're stuck, all these things, right? But one of the things that it did was force people to actually go online, right? And there's negatives to that. There's people spending too much time on their phones, on social media, like my girlfriend. But But like for example, it's like I wasn't. There's an app called Lazada here, right, in the Philippines,
It's like Amazon.
and like Amazon exactly. And I wasn't. I guess I was skeptical of it. Like I was like, I heard like horror stories where people would get scammed and all this stuff, and I was like, I just don't want to deal with that. Like, but what happened was when we were in lockdown, I needed stuff like even something simple as toilet paper, but more it was other things like maybe shoes or something like that. But you can't go to the mall because the mall's closed, and then I'll just have to go on Lazada and order it. Like and at the beginning it wasn't perfect, but they have improved a lot, and their business has grown a lot, and a lot of people have learned how to shop online because of COVID.
Yeah, true. Like no need to go to the markets anymore.
Yeah,
as long as you have a smartphone and a bank account.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, a lot of people in countries like Philippines, like a lot of times people don't have bank accounts.
Yeah.
Right. So then it goes, okay, if I can't go to the market, then I need to open a bank account so I can have a credit card or debit card, so I can buy stuff online. So
yeah, exactly. And that's crazy as well. It's
so. What about on your end? I know people could Google what happened in Canada and stuff like that, but specifically for you, how did COVID affect your career, life, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, like I was working for that company that was working with you guys in the PPE space, and we were having issues like everyone else, just getting our stuff out of China, which sort of affected the business at first. And then we got into the PPE game pretty early. Like I think we got in like that first few weeks, and then things just got harder and harder to get out of China. So we struggled a lot to get repeat customers because we couldn't promise an accurate delivery date on time. And at that time, it was the matter of like life or death for some of these hospitals that needed PPE. So the business itself dissolved at one point. Like my friend, who was one of the bosses of the company, stepped away from the company, and I decided to take a step back as well, and I left that company. And then I took some time off to sort of think about it. I moved to Ottawa at that point, and was just trying to figure my next move. And I got another job in the meantime working from Ottawa, and then COVID affected that business as well. So I decided just to move to Toronto, and it was the middle of COVID, but I don't regret a thing in the sense that like there wasn't many opportunities for me in Ottawa job wise, and came to Toronto. Took a bit of time, but finally found a job, and ever since then it's been like just a lot of opportunity and lots of like growth in terms of figuring out what I want to do with my future and where I want to go career wise. So just that aspect of COVID, like just having that time to sort of take a step back and figure that out, and then just being able to move to a city like Toronto in the middle of COVID, like I was able to find an apartment for cheaper. So got to capitalize on that, and now it's ended here in Canada. Like just last week, the government finally sort of lifted like a lot of the mandates and a lot of the travel restrictions. So it finally feels like we can finally take a breath again, and like I don't know, it feels like the last 2 years were so long, but like I sort of have the philosophy like I'm not letting that hold me back. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing and kind of move on from it.
Yeah, just sort of soldier on. And I mean, I think a lot of people that have had I feel like there's going to be a lot of psychological issues from COVID.
Oh yeah.
I've had my own stuff where I was going crazy. with the lockdowns in the Philippines and stuff like that. It was like, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people have had major issues just because financial stress and family stress, being at home all the time, like things like that. Like, so it's nice to see now that things are moving forward, but I think there's going to be a lot of healing and therapy involved in the next little while.
Oh yeah, for sure. If anything, like I feel like we dealt with COVID and everything, but the psychological effects and the after effects of how we dealt it, we will not feel until we're gonna deal with it for the next 10, 20, 50 years, honestly,
Yeah.
for some people.
Well, yeah, I think for a lot of people this would be, I think a lot of people this would be sort of like a generational thing where it's like,
Yeah.
the COVID issue affected this generation of people, the millennials or whatever,
Yeah.
right? So I think it's going to be that. But like the good part about something I predicted, I don't know if you saw this, but something that I predicted at the beginning of COVID was like, there's going to be a lot of babies and there's also going to be a lot of breakups and also a lot of marriages. And I saw, like, I swear in the last 2 years, I've seen a lot of new babies popping out, lots of marriages and lots of breakups. But it's always when there's some sort of tragedy or some major world event. That's kind of what happens in with people. It's like for some reason we feel this need to like reproduce at that moment, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and I mean for me personally, just because of the age, I just turned 30 in April. So and kind of where I'm at, you start asking yourself certain questions. Your girlfriend and your girlfriend's friends are asking you certain questions. I'm not going to go deep into this, but yeah, it's just one of those where I'm like, all right, like it doesn't help that so many people around us, got married and had kids and things like this during this time period.
Oh yeah, you and me both. I know many people who are either getting married or broken up, and yeah, it's that stage in your life, right? Like early 30s, late 20s, where people are figuring their shit out. People are figuring out what they want to do with their future. And yeah, the past year during COVID was definitely like that for me. And then just sort of reflecting on my time in Source Financial, and then like how to best use those experiences to like move my career forward. So yeah, I feel like I'm in a place now where, those 2 years I was definitely like taking my time to figure it out, but I feel like I still am to this day, but I feel like I'm at a better place now to figure and had time to sort of figure that out.
Nice.